Welcome, councillors, members of the public and staff present and in person joining us online and watching via YouTube this evening. My name is Scott Morrissey, Councillor Scott Morrissey. I'll be chairing the public forum session. I declare the public forum session open at 6 p.m. Councillors and those present are reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, to keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. The public forum will now commence for the City Planning and Environment Committee. Public forums are live streamed and recorded via YouTube. Please therefore treat everyone with dignity, respect, and do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Councillors are reminded of obligations under the Code of Meeting Practice in the interest of good governance. All present are reminded that the YouTube video is a recording. The YouTube video recording is an official record of council and will be accessible via YouTube in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice. No other recordings are permitted, and all present should ensure that there are no video recordings, audio recordings or photographs taken. In case of emergency, please follow the instructions of council staff, exit via the Town Hall foyer and proceed to the evacuation point. The acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Bidjigal clan, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and work, and acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present. Does any councillor present around the table have any disclosure of interest on this item? No disclosure of interests have been made. Moving now to the public forum. Members of the public who have applied to speak at the public forum are now invited to address those present. Speakers are reminded that if a matter has been raised by a previous speaker, there is no need to raise the matter during your address. Please only speak on additional matters. Speakers have been advised on your allocated time to address the public forum. A warning bell will sound with 1 minute of speaking time remaining. Speakers who are joining the meeting via MS Teams, actually everyone's in person, you have a video off, but anyway, everyone's here tonight. Speakers will be removed from Teams once the item has concluded. As no decisions are made at the public forum, anyone present is able to watch the meeting when it commences on Bayside Council's YouTube channel. If you registered a written submission prior to the meeting, and I believe there has been one, please note that these have been provided to councillors and myself. Speakers are reminded to keep communication factual, polite and professional, and to use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation laws do apply to addresses in public forum. We have 3 speakers tonight dealing with the City Planning Environment Committee, which is the item 26.001, the Independent Heritage Assessment for 116 Villiers Street, Rockdale. The first speaker is Associate Professor Ali Amin. He's speaking against the committee recommendation, and you're free to address now. Thank you.
All right. Councillors, my name is Associate Professor Ali Amin, and I rise to speak in strong opposition to this item, but I want to do so constructively. Tonight is not simply about debate about a heritage. It's about fairness, lawfulness, and the way heritage planning is being carried out by this council. On 5th of September, Bayside Council issued a 10.7 certificate for this property. The certificate confirmed there were no heritage overlays, no heritage listings, and no indication of any impeding heritage action. That certificate exists for one reason, so people can rely on it. I relied on it, the banks relied on it, and valuers relied on it. Then, just 5 weeks later, an interim heritage order was imposed without warning, without disclosure, and without any genuine opportunity for an affected family to respond. That is not good heritage planning, that is an ambush. And the consequences have been immediate and devastating. Since the IHO has been imposed, multiple independent bank evaluations have been prepared. I have one here for you, which you can see. Each of them have come in at around $1 million below the agreed purchase price. As a result, finance has been withdrawn and I cannot complete on the purchase. Councillors, I need you to understand that what this means in human terms. To settle, I need to find an additional $1.5 million. Not 150 grand, $1.5 million. I do not have it. No ordinary family has it. Settlement was due 2 days ago, and my family has been living under the shock and stress of this ever since. This is not because I acted recklessly, it is because the planning position of the property was fundamentally changed after I relied on council's own certification. The report by Peter Barber states that while some see heritage listing as positive, others see it as a as a constraint. With respect, that framing misses the point. In the real world, value is determined by what banks will lend against, and in this instance, they will not lend against the contract price. The IHO has materially reduced the lending value and destroyed my ability to complete. As a direct result, I am now exposed to legal action by the vendors for failure to complete, despite acting in good faith based on council's own statutory information. That exposure is not theoretical. If the property sells for less, which is now likely, I may be sued for the difference in addition to other costs. I need to say this plainly. I am at financial breaking point. This has put my family in an impossible and devastating position. I am standing here asking you to understand that this is not politics for me. It is my home, my finances, and my family's future. But I'm not here just to criticise. I'm here because I believe council can and must do better when it comes to heritage planning. Heritage should be identified early, transparently, and strategically, not through last-minute orders that ambush families after commitments are locked in. Heritage planning should give certainty to the community, not fear. Councillors, I want to be part of the solution. I am willing to help. I am willing to offer my time, my professional skills, and my lived experience to contribute to improving council's heritage process. Please. No, can I please?
How much longer have you got till we're on a
Half a minute.
Okay, 30 seconds. That's fine. Thank you.
There's also a lawful and proportionate way forward in this case. If council genuinely believes this property is of such heritage importance that the private ownership and development are incompatible with public interest, then the honest and most amicable solution is for council to purchase the property and carry that public burden itself, rather than transferring it to one family through an ambush process. Councillors, you're being asked to endorse a process where reliance on council documentation is encouraged, warning is withheld, and financial commitments are locked in, and devastating consequences are imposed after the fact. That is not good governance, that is not good planning, that is not procedural fairness. I urge you to oppose this item, not because the heritage is unimportant, but because lawfulness, fairness, and trust matter more. Finally, councillors, your decision tonight may well determine whether my family faces financial ruin, bankruptcy, and I ask you, on the behalf of my family, please oppose this.
Thank you, Ms. Charman. Next up, we have Ms. Elise Trusas speaking for the committee recommendation.
Okay. Good evening. I speak tonight not only for myself, but for the Bayside residents whose voices could not be present this evening. We extend our sincerest gratitude to all the councillors who supported the IHO for 116 Villas Street. That decision was not solely an emotional one. It was a careful, responsible planning decision grounded in evidence, process, and good governance. We also extend our thanks to the diligent and highly skilled team at GML Heritage for their comprehensive evidence-based report. Their work clearly disproves that the claim 116 Villa Street lacks sufficient heritage significance. The findings clearly show that the property is an important part of Bayside's story and deserves thoughtful consideration. Importantly, the report also demonstrates that heritage protection does not prevent progress. It outlines practical and sensitive ways to extend and adapt the house without calling in the bulldozers. Good example, around the corner in 23 Saigonho Street, Arncliffe, a young family similar to Associate Professor Amin's, where a heritage home combined with a modern extension was so successful, it actually features on Grand Design Transformations Australia. I encourage you all to watch that episode. Once buildings like this are demolished, their embodied energy, craftsmanship, and cultural value are permanently lost. From a technical planning perspective, demolition is the least sustainable outcome. Respected Australian architect and academic Caroline Piddock, who also advises the Strathfield Council, has recently highlighted the importance of retaining older buildings from a carbon reduction perspective. This aligns directly with Bayside Council's own environmental and sustainability pledge. Protecting 116 Villa Street is not about standing in the way of change. It is about choosing thoughtful progress, climate responsibility, and respect for our shared history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trusas. And finally, the third speaker, Ms. Anne Field, speaking for the committee recommendation. Ms. Field.
Good evening. I would like to talk firstly. I think right. Good evening. I'll start
you.
again. I
That's
have the
fine.
button on. Firstly, I'd like to applaud Council for employing a heritage firm with a well-known reputation to do the independent report on 116 Villiers Street, Rockdale. The report is very detailed and very accurate and recommends that the interim heritage order be extended to 6 months in the pursuit of further action. Secondly, I'd like to reiterate, as I started to say at the last extraordinary council meeting, in 1998, before the Land and Environment Court, there was a very important judgment made. And that judgment that was made by Justice Talbot was that heritage listing can be retrospective. That was reported in the Australian Financial Review, 13th of July, 1998. And if I can just elaborate further on this landmark decision. Woollahra Council was then able to protect a 1908 building, although the listing came through after there had been a DA application to approve a residential apartment block on the site. Jeremy Bingham, who was then Woollahra Council solicitor, said that developers are buying a building, that when developers are buying a building to demolish, they must think about whether the building has heritage significance and not just whether it is heritage listed. Justice Talbot went on to say that the council was doing no more than carrying out its statutory duty to properly manage, develop, protect, restore, enhance and conserve the environment of the area for which it is responsible. Talbot continued and said that the council cannot be expected to have adequate resources that will enable it to investigate every property in the area at one time. So in this case, clearly retrospectivity will be one of the issues. And in conclusion, I'd like to support what Elise said and also to say that we have very much a blank canvas in this situation where the property can be restored, compatible buildings could be added with an FSR bonus. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Field. That's the conclusion of the public forum. I'll declare the session closed at 6:14 p.m. The meeting will commence at 7 p.m. of the Land and Environment Committee. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I just don't have the papers up here to read out whatever the result of this is. Do you have a paper version of the motion that we're about for the extraordinary? It's not in this paper. You mean the opening or the recommendation? The recommendation. If we're going to read that at the end, we usually read that at the end if it's passed. Is that right? You would? Okay, well, you go for it then. That's fine. And I'll pass to you. The general manager will now read this. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Sorry. This stuff I do have. Yeah, thank you. Okie dokie. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Extraordinary Council meeting, 4th of February 2026. Welcome to councillors, members of the public and staff present in person, joining us online and watching via YouTube this evening. I declare the meeting open at 6:48 p.m. Is that right? Yes. Councillors and those present are reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Council meetings are live streamed and recorded via YouTube. Please therefore treat everyone with dignity, respect, and do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Councillors are reminded of obligations to conduct yourselves in a professional and respectful manner under the obligations of Council's Code of Meeting Practice in the interest of good governance and to adhere to meeting etiquette. All present are reminded that the YouTube video recording is an official record of Council and will be accessible via YouTube in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice. No other recordings are permitted, and all present should ensure that there are no video recordings, audio recordings, or photographs taken. In case of emergency, please follow the instructions of the Council staff, exit via the Botany Town Hall foyer, and proceed to the evacuation point. I'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal clan, the traditional owners on the land on which we meet and work, and acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present. I now invite Helen Toller, Manager of Governance and Risk, to open the meeting in evening prayer.
Almighty God, we thank you for the community of Bayside and for the benefits of living and working in this diverse area. As we commence this meeting, inspire us with qualities of good counsel so that firm foundations of governance be upheld in Bayside Council. Give the Mayor and councillors insight to make wise decisions, integrity to face the truth, courage to make difficult choices, and compassion for the needs of others. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. So there are no apologies received this evening, and there are no applications for leave of absence. Okay, thank you. We have apologies.
I have an apology from the Mayor, Councillor McDougall, and apology from Councillor Bezic.
Okay, we have an apology from the Mayor, Councillor McDougall, and Councillor Bezic. Okay, move second and then vote on the apologies. So move Councillor Brederhoft, second Councillor Morrissey. No leave of absences received. And we'll move to attendance via audiovisual link. We have Councillor Awada wishing to participate in this meeting via audiovisual link. Is that correct? Okay, no audiovisual link attendance? Okay. Okay. So we have Councillor Boutelet and Councillor Dusku wishing to participate in this meeting via audiovisual link. Would someone like to move and second a motion to grant the councillors' request to attend the meeting via audiovisual links? Councillor Kasim and Councillor Strong, thank you. Vote on attending. All those in favour say aye. Against, I declare that carried. Does any councillor wish to make any disclosure of interest this evening?
Yes, Chair, I make that non-pecuniary, non-significant interest.
Do you want to use the microphone? Do we need to use the microphone? On the table? No? Councillor Curry is declaring a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest and is leaving the room for the debate. Thank you. Any other declarations of interest?
Just worryingly, if you scroll down, we're at Botany, not Rockdale.
The location at the top.
Okay.
Location's wrong.
Location is being fixed.
Chair, I think Councillor Curry held positions on the board of the Bayside.
Okay, so Councillor Curry is, okay,
She's held positions on the board of various community.
is leaving because she's held positions on the board of various community organisations. Thank you. There are no mayoral minutes and no items by exception. We're moving straight into a confidential report in accordance with Section 10A4 of the Local Government Act and manager, when its time is right, to announce the resolutions carried in the closed motion. Okay.
Thank you, Council. The recommendation, the resolution is as follows: that Council endorses the acquisition of the property referred to in this report for addition to its affordable rental housing portfolio, that Council includes a budget adjustment in its March 2026 quarterly budget review statement to cover the purchase, to be funded through an internal borrowing against Council's Strategic Priorities Reserve, and to be repaid from the Affordable Housing Reserve as funds accumulate. The Council provides the General Manager delegated authority to make an offer for the property or to attend an auction and bid up to the valuation amount, which has been tabled at this meeting, plus 20%. That the General Manager is authorised to sign, where required, or documentation to facilitate the purchase, and that if acquired, the property be categorised as operational under the Local Government Act and be managed with Council's affordable rental housing portfolio. Thank you.
Excellent. There being no further items on the agenda this evening, I declare the meeting closed at 7:01 p.m. Must be record time for a council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. Thank you for coming. Yeah. I did find it, truly. It's my 2 a.m. hobby.
Welcome, councillors, members of the public and staff. I declare the meeting open at 7:02 p.m, which is a City Planning and Environment Committee meeting of Bayside Council on the 4th of February 2026. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice and Meeting Etiquette. I remind all present that the video recording is an official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. Item number 1 is our acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the Bidjigal clan, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and work, and acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present. Item 2, apologies, leave of absence. Everyone is present, all committee members are present. Disclosures of interest, are there any councillors who wish to make a disclosure of interest on any item tonight? No disclosures of interest received. Item number 4 is minutes of the previous meetings. Can I ask 2 councillors who are present to move the acceptance of those meetings? Councillor Douglas, Councillor Strong, all those in favour say aye. Against, I'll declare that carried. Thank you. There are no items by exception tonight. There are 3 reports. The first will get started with the CPE 26.001, which is the Independent Heritage Assessment of 116 Villiers Street, Rockdale. Are we going to have a officer's presentation prior? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So just some quick background. In December 2025, the St George Historical Society expressed some concerns about the property at 116 Villiers Street, which was on the market or coming onto the market. In October last year, Council received notification from a private certifier that a complying development certificate had been lodged for demolition of the building. And then soon after that, later in October, following a preliminary heritage assessment, Council issued an interim heritage order, which was published in the Government Gazette. That order basically provided a period of 6 months for Council to determine whether the property was worthy of being listed as a heritage item in Council's LEP or not. And so we're at the point of having done that detailed assessment and at that decision-making point now. So if the site is determined to be of heritage significance, that it should be listed in the LEP, the interim heritage order can be extended for a further 6 months to allow that process to occur. So in November last year, we engaged GML, a heritage consultant, to undertake an independent heritage assessment. And during that period too, there had been appeals lodged in the Land Environment Court against the issuing of the interim heritage order. And that legal process is underway now. The running of those appeals doesn't prevent Council from considering whether it should progress to list the building or not. The heritage orders are issued under the Heritage Act, and this process is under the Environment Planning and Assessment Act. So in January this year, GML completed their assessment after they had access to the interior and exterior of the building to do inspections. And they've recommended that the building is worthy of being listed as an item of local heritage significance in the LEP. And their full assessment report is attached to the report on the agenda tonight. So the listing of a property in the LEP then brings into play a clause in the LEP, which is a heritage provision. It does have constraints in terms of what happens to heritage items in the future. Any work to them has to be carefully assessed through a heritage impact assessment. It does also provide some concessions that allow development that would not otherwise be allowed on the site if that development will result in the building or the property being conserved. So the heritage listing doesn't mean that the property can't be altered or added to. It just means that those works have to be looked at carefully and have to be sympathetic and sensitive to the heritage item. And one example we've referred to is Victoria House. Councillors may know of on Forest Road. That building has been restored, and there's a townhouse development behind it that was allowed under those heritage provisions in the LEP. Potential options. We did seek some advice from GML as to whether there was potential for development if the property was to be heritage listed. The comments that are shown here and in the report are very preliminary. I have to stress that. There's no plan, there's no firm proposal. We simply asked them if these things were possibilities or not. They need to be properly assessed and through the DA process, and then would most likely go to the local planning panel for determination. So these comments are preliminary. We asked them to consider whether a lot could be subdivided off the rear of the property. There is a fair amount of yard that faces Oswald Street. and a lot could be created there that's similar in area to other lots in the vicinity, so it wouldn't be out of place. And their comments were essentially that that's possible. There would be some impact from that, but they didn't rule that out as a possibility. And the second possibility we put to them was whether other buildings could be constructed on the site, a secondary dwelling or other dwellings in a strata plan around the existing home on the property. And again, they didn't rule that out. That would have to be carefully designed and assessed so it didn't detract from the building, but they believe there was some potential there for further development on the property. And of course, there's the option to extend the existing house and renovate it as well. In terms of next steps, so the tonight's report includes that heritage assessment by GML, which concludes that the building is worthy of listing. The decision point tonight is for council to decide whether it wants to proceed with that process to list the building in the LEP and extend the heritage order for another 6 months. The alternative decision is that council doesn't resolve to do that, in which case the interim heritage order could be revoked. If council does decide to proceed with listing the building, the heritage order is extended for a further 6 months to allow that process to be followed. We would prepare a planning proposal, which is an amendment to the LEP to add the building to the heritage list, and that goes through the normal LEP amendment process to the Department of Planning for gateway determination, then community consultation, and then back to council for final decision. That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Have a mover, Councillor Barlow. You moving that?
Yeah, I'll move the motion
And
with,
seconder, Councillor Douglas. Thank you. Councillor Barlow.
with the additions on the screen, which is part 4, that council as a matter of emergency investigate the current owner of 116 Villiers Street would rescind the current sale contract for the property entered into in September 2025, return the deposit paid by the prospective purchaser, enter into a contract to sell the property to council for the same sale price as in the rescinded contract, that council authorises the general manager to negotiate and enter into contract to purchase 116 Villiers Street for the same sale price as in the rescinded contract. And I know that the Speaker did say that he would, doesn't council buy it? I had a lot of time and research over the years, and there was a resident in somebody Hijazi, don't know him, but we had a lot of email conversations. I was listing all the properties that we have in Rockdale that we have saved that have had interim heritage order on them, which I thought was this person's one in Dunmore Street. And there is a lot. There's one in Abercorn Street. There's quite a few, and they're little tiny cottages. Banbury Cottage in Chandler Street was one of our oldest buildings. It now has a childcare centre with it. So there was a lot of issues that I thought could be, and I spoke to the General Manager and the Director of Planning to see if anything could happen before I got this report. And now that the Speaker has said that he'd like to, if council wants to buy it, he's happy to get the relief of not having any sort of financial difficulties. And so I'm hoping that everyone will support that motion.
Can I just clarify? That's point 4. We're keeping the original,
Yeah, keeping the original.
aren't we?
And then
And then adding that.
1, 2, 3, and then 4 to.
And what I think what the effect of that is, we'll proceed as the proposal that we're going to vote on is to proceed with the officer's recommendation. However, concurrently speak to, what does it say? Basically speak to the vendor and see if he'll rescind the contract and sell it to council, and they're thus releasing the purchaser from his obligations and without any further difficulty, which is sort of reflected from the comments made in the public forum, I think.
Yeah, we're starting to do a heritage study for the whole area, so it'd be good to.
Okay, so
Chair, could I just also
Yes,
add
Jean.
that we have a source of funding, the Strategic Priorities Reserve, and very importantly, I think that council use this as a demonstration of what can be done with a heritage property. We are embarking on a heritage strategy. It's incredibly important that we are able to demonstrate to our community that there are opportunities that come out of owning a heritage listed property. And I think this gives us the perfect chance to demonstrate that.
Okay. Okay, is there any other speakers? Councillor Strong? You keep turning it on and off.
Well, this is, I think this is through the chair, a good development, potentially a win-win development. You know, I do think that it wasn't a good use of a motion to remove a process. An IHO is a process when demolition is planned as an emergency brake to save a place. But I do feel for Professor Ali Amin in his financial situation. So if this can happen, then that's a great thing. But we really need, moving forward, to look into a heritage register. There was a study back in 1999. It's a bit old now. We really need to update that and really look at making this so it can never happen again. I think council buying the place and showing how a good development could happen there, retaining the heritage charm, is also a very positive thing. So yeah, I do support the recommendation and welcome a solution that hopefully will suit all parties.
Thank you. Councillor Brederhoff?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same. I think this is a good solution for the involved parties, and it doesn't mean we have to stop here. It means there's further work that we as council have to do, and councillors, in terms of the heritage strategy that will come. And it's a great opportunity to actually showcase in the LGA what could be done with a property like this. Keep heritage and house life alive, and yeah, it's a good outcome. Thank you for that suggestion.
Councillor Kassim?
Yeah, thank you to all concerned for everything that's done. I know there's been a lot of emotion and a lot of pain for a lot of people from this. And so I sincerely hope that, you know, this will at least assuage some of that for the family involved, and agree, of course, that, you know, this is really important, that this be a matter of education in terms of, as you say, best practice, and also in terms of what Ms. Field said earlier, for people to be aware that it is not only, something's important not only because it is listed as heritage, but that because it has heritage significance. So I think that's a important thing for us to make people aware of as well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Councillor Douglas, are you going to speak?
I was just going to point out that we did pass a motion for council last March on scoping feasibility report on a heritage review and local character assessment that Councillor Brederhoff and I put up and was thankfully supported by the council, which includes a heritage review and local character assessment, the scoping and feasibility of the report. Coming back.
March, I think it's coming back. Your report will be back in March.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess I wanted to note that just for the public forum's benefit, that the council has indicated that this is a high priority for us, that we are doing more comprehensive work on this. This is not just an individual case, that this is a direction of the council and has been for some time.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers? No. I'll then put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Yes, it's a recommendation of council. So this will now go to the full council meeting at the end of the month. So for those in the public forum, it means that the committee's recommendation is to proceed with the heritage listing. However, council will, as a matter of urgency, which is like tomorrow, contact the vendor through the agent, whatever appropriate means, and see and make an offer to buy the property, and thus rescinding the purchaser's contract and releasing from obligations. So I think it's a fair pathway for all involved. I think it's a really good recommendation. Thank you. All right. Okay, thank you, councillors. Moving on, CPE 26.002, update on the Brighton Les Sands and Bay Street Master Plan. You can have an update on that one, please, from council officers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. There is an early resolution of council from December last year to confirm a project plan, and part of that resolution was for us to make a few adjustments to that and also come back with a review of an additional area that could be incorporated into the master plan scope. There was also part of that resolution was to look at the Complete Streets program and the comprehensive master plan and the sequencing of those and how they might how they fit together. So in regard to that, the Complete Streets program really focuses on the public domain, and the focus in this case would be on Bay Street. A master plan and a Complete Streets program both essentially have the same vision, and that is about improving a place for people, improving transport and general amenity. The opportunity that they do both overlap in terms of how they're prepared. The outputs from them are a little different, and I'll come to that in a second. So yeah, as I said, Complete Streets focuses on public domain, short to medium term changes with a focus on both movement and place. Comprehensive master plan is a longer term strategy, and it looks at redevelopment in a centre generally. So land use, density, height of buildings, building form, public transport, as well as the public domain and place. So just a little comparison, and this diagram is in the report as well. You can see them how they would sort of run in parallel there. There is a lot of overlap in them, as I said. When you come to the end of the two projects, the full master plan is really implemented through changes to the LEP, and they would deal with land zoning, heights and floor space ratios and the like, and amendments to the DCP to match those. The Complete Streets output is more of a public domain plan, so with a focus in this case on Bay Street, and that would look at how the road corridor is treated, pedestrianisation, beautification, public safety and those kinds of things. It's common for them to be done together. If you're planning for a place in terms of providing additional dwellings and uplift, you need to also have a look at your town centre and see how it needs to change to accommodate that additional growth. The other points in the resolution, there was a request to show Rockdale Public School and the heritage conservation areas and items in the plan, which has been done. The project timeline has been revised as requested to include some councillor training sessions and some early engagement as well, and that's highlighted in the green box in that diagram, which is also in the report. And also the work around looking at the Complete Streets component and when that happens. Point 6 of that resolution was to look at adding another area into the master plan scope. That area is this little peninsula, I guess, between the Little Grand Parade and General Holmes Drive. It's in the red oval shape there, so it runs up along the foreshore up to Bestick Street. Some of the things to consider there, it is isolated by General Holmes Drive. Pedestrian and vehicle access to there is quite restricted. There's really only Bestick Street and another cross street that provides access. There's actually no crossing for pedestrians between Bestick Street and Bay Street. I think that's a distance of something like 1.4 kilometres, so it's a little bit isolated. And there's public transport is not well provided in that area. At the moment, the focus on Brighton is definitely Bay Street in terms of the commercial and retail activity there. So looking at whether adding an area like this in that maybe mixed use would dilute the strength of that centre, I think is an important thing to think about. This area has not been identified in Council's local strategic planning statement or its housing strategy for redevelopment or investigation. And that's partly because there are some constraints here around the high cost of property acquisition. The houses, particularly on the waterfront, would be of high value to acquire and consolidate. There are issues there with potentially overshadowing the beach, depending on the scale of buildings that was allowed there. And also the water table is very high, which makes development of basements quite difficult below one level. In terms of risk, in terms of going out with this area, there is a risk that we create expectations that there will be development in that area, which may not eventuate. So that would need to be managed. Expanding the study area will delay the program. It's just more work to be done, essentially, to be added in, and it increases the scope of the studies on feasibility and transport, which is the first step. So our recommendation is that we maintain the current proposed boundary, which doesn't include this area, or if council wants to include it, that it proceeds through the first phase of the project, which is looking at feasibility and transport. And then council could consider the outcome of that before deciding whether it remains in the project or not. And the reasons for that, as I said, are I think feasibility will be a challenge in this area because of the value of the properties and some of the construction difficulties. So we could look at that first, and then council could make a decision once it has that information. So they are the two studies that we'll do first, looking at feasibility, and we'll pick a number of sites through the proposed master plan area and have them modelled in terms of development feasibility. And that will essentially show us what kind of building density and heights are required to achieve feasible development. And that will help council decide how it wants to proceed beyond that. And also looking at transport. So we'll do some traffic studies and some other work to understand how traffic moves around the area. And there'll be a particular focus on connecting Brighton and Rockdale using Bay Street. I'm looking at an active transport connection there and potentially a rapid regular bus service to connect the two as well. So we'll do those two pieces of work and then come back to council for some further direction. So the milestones for the project, you can see the next step there after approval of the project plan last year is to do that economic and transport work, and then we'll come back to you in a couple of months and report back on that, scheduling that for May this year. And then we'll, after some more direction from council, we'll then engage some external help, some consultants to help prepare the master plan and the Complete Streets project at the same time. And then you can see the rest of it rolls out from there with coming back to this committee and then to council and out to the public. I think that is it for that one. Okay, so as I said, there is a checkpoint built in there where we'll come back after we've done the economic feasibility and transport study for further direction. And then we'll come back to council after we've done some preliminary work on Complete Streets and the master plan, again, just to make sure that we're on the right track. That's it for that one. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Mr. Barb. We have a mover for that one. Councillor Douglas, second. Councillor Brederhoff. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you for this report. I just want to take us back, I feel like I'm Councillor Barlow, take us back on a history lesson, back to November 2020, when Councillor Bill Saranowski put a motion on car hooning in Bayside, a petition from community members. And I was one of those community members. He put that up for support from the council, and that included a recommendation from the community with over 3,000 signatures for a Bay Street Corso. We propose that a section of Bay Street between the Grand Parade and Mowat Avenue is closed to traffic other than emergency vehicles and turned into a Corso mall each Sunday from 7 a.m. to 12 a.m. Monday through to the summer months commencing 13th of December. So that was one of the original conversations that I was involved with as council at that time. There was also a motion that same month from Councillor Poulos, who's back on council, to do street activations and closures over the summer. So there's been a lot of interest. I've personally tracked from residents both as a pre-council days and then as a councillor for the pedestrianisation of Bay Street. So I'm particularly passionate about this issue because I constantly have people asking me about this, including a gentleman who just today and last night reached out because he was sick of e-bikes on the footpath, and I went back to him and he's talking specifically about Brighton. I said, well, would you support a bike track in a separated bike track in Brighton? He said, definitely I would do that, and I really want council to do the work of pedestrianisation of Bay Street that they've been talking about. And we're going back to 2020 and it's now 2026, and there has been very limited movement in this space, and that was the intention of the Complete Streets part of this. And my concern is that we don't want the Complete Streets work to be dependent on a 10 to 20 year master plan. Talking to the mayor, there are two sorts of things that can happen in this space. There is development, which can provide further setbacks and create public amenity once you get that development happening. But there's also things that councils can do to advocate for the revisioning, the renewal of an urban town centre. and that doesn't have to be dependent on development. So there's two things that we can do as a council, and this does bring both of those things together, but I'm concerned that the community has an expectation of council from back to 2020. And I think there's been a long history of that well before that original petition as well in the area. I would like to see an amendment to this that for point 3, I think she's writing that now. Note that the inclusion of the complete streets public consultation component be an integral part of the comprehensive master plan, and based on based on the public advocacy and council direction since 2020, delivery of the Complete Streets project be a near-term priority for delivery and not be dependent on the higher density and uplift elements of the proposed Brighton Les Sands and Bay Street master plan. I hope that's clear in the intent that I'm representing for the ward and for the wider community that uses Bay Street and Brighton Les Sands, that they want council to take the bull by the horns and have action on this in the near term and not postpone it indefinitely with a master planning process.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I understand the concern there. Our preference is to do the broader master plan and Complete Streets together, but that need not take a long time. Our timeframe has us coming back seeking approval for exhibition of the master plan, which would include Complete Streets in March next year, so 12 months or so away, and then out to the community for engagement. If council wants to commit to civil works projects soon after it adopts that plan, it can, if council wants to fund them or seek grants to do that. I don't think we need to wait for development to happen for those improvements to be delivered. If we do want setbacks or land dedications, we would, unless we're prepared to purchase that land. But I think if, say, the outcome was that the street is fully or partially closed, that requires curbs to be moved and roads to be changed and things like that, that could happen ahead of redevelopment in the centre. There's no need to wait for that if council has a funding source to do it. And the other important thing is that it's not council's road, so transport will have the final say in what happens on Bay Street, and we'll obviously need to work with them, but that may impact council's ability to deliver and the time frame, I guess.
Councillor Brederholt?
Yeah, I second those concerns. As a, upper Ward 3 Bay Street representative, I also get a lot of comments and a lot of requests like that, especially also now that the active transport link M6 is open. There's actually more traffic, I feel like, on the footpath, bike riders and people going to that to the active transport link, and then using the beautiful new active transport link. So that has, I think, put more pressure on Bay Street as well, and more need to really commence that work sooner and have people travelling from Rockdale Station to those links.
So I was just reading that again. Councillor Barlow?
Just a few comments. 2020, we threw the whole of the master plan out of council. I think you were not on council, but the intensity in Bay Street, it was before an election though, and they threw it out, the whole lot. But that doesn't matter. I mean, and Bay Street, yes, something's got to be done possibly. We don't own the street. We don't inherit any more maintenance of anything. We've got the Camway Greenway, which is we've been given it with forever costing us money. But the only thing I want to make a comment about was you've put Rockdale Public School in there, but can you be very conscious of the height of the buildings that you propose there? We don't want Cogra, like a Cogra Public School, where you've got buildings that are 10 to 12 stories high, which they can see straight into the classroom. So that to me needs to be really looked at for the closeness to that school. But definitely we did throw out whatever it was we did in 2020, 2020.
And that's the sort of things that will come out very, we should highlight that as part of the public consultation process. These are the sorts of things we should consider. Councillor Douglas.
I mean, I was part of the community, but not a councillor when that happened, and I spoke in public forum when that happened. And I think the general sense from being a witness to that meeting was that the community felt like just the widening of Bay Street and the high-rise uplift wasn't addressing the hooning issues that we have been going on and on and on about. Well, it was also widening the street makes hooning worse, so I think we need to solve the issues that we have as a community. We don't want more uplift and more car parking and more traffic and more of the hecticness. We need more peaceful streets. We need safer streets. Like, these are the things that community for the last 5 years has been asking council to do to address the hooning issues. We've done a lot with noise cameras, but there's more to do. And this is a central tenet of that, reaching back to 2020. So I think if we can get those two things combined, then the community will have the acceptance. And speaking to people like the Committee for Sydney about this, like, if you do complete streets well, then that enables the public buy-in for the rest of the uplift, and it enables the developers to see the potential in that area. Like, who would want to, at the moment, invest in an area which has got a reputation for hooning? Who wants to buy there? Like, it is a risk for developers. So the more we can make this a beautiful public amenity, the more uplift potential we have. So I think that's why, speaking to other councils, City of Sydney, I've done a lot of research on this. Doing the complete streets first creates the pathway for that other uplift and density.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a reasonable amendment that should be supported. Is there any other speakers? I'll put that. No, sorry, Councillor Kassim.
Yes, through the chair, Councillor, I was just going to ask, just because I wasn't around at the time, if there were already questions at the time about closing the street. I mean, I love the idea of a Corso down there myself, personally. I think it'd be beautiful. But I know that there is significant cost every time we do close streets for a festival or whatever. Would this require some sort of a traffic study if we did it like every Sunday or something? And, and is there any prospect of getting state government somehow to, help pay for this if it is their road?
Through you, Chair, I think Transport accepts now that the street can be closed on occasions for events and things like that, or a number of times throughout the year. And yes, it does come at a cost. I think it's around 30,000 just for traffic management each time. I think what we're contemplating now, though, is looking at a more permanent solution that would either narrow the road down to make it quieter, or potentially close it completely, or only allow emergency vehicles through. So that's a different proposition. There does need to be traffic analysis done, because if the street is closed or slowed, cars or vehicles will go elsewhere. We will do that as the next phase in this program. So the feasibility and the transport assessment will start to look at that, and we'll be able to come back to you with some advice on what might happen if, say, the road was closed, where the traffic is likely to go, and who would be impacted by that. So that will help. I think this process will be a little bit iterative, and it might be at that point that council feels more confident to say, yes, this is the outcome that we're trying to achieve, let's go in that direction. But yeah, I think some of that data will be helpful, and we'll be coming back to you with that as the next phase in this project.
Sorry, Councillor, I ask one more question?
Councillor Douglas.
So, will that take into consideration the impact of the M6 eventually opening as well? And my second part of that question is, I checked back in with the Committee for Sydney on their proposal for Prince's Highway. I think they called it a traffic diet or a road diet, which is something I'd never heard of before. So would it also potentially, I think that report is coming out in March or April, they said.
Through your chair, yeah, we do have the data or the forecast for the M6 opening. That's now 6 or 7 years old, so we might need to look at that to see whether those forecasts are still likely to eventuate. The opening of that is at least 3 years away, from what we understand. So the timing of that will have to be looked at as well to make sure that any changes to the road network are synchronised there. But yeah, there was definitely forecasts of a reduction in traffic on the Grand Parade and Princess Highway, and so yeah, we can go back and revisit that.
Excellent, thank you. There's no further speakers. Did you want to speak, Councillor Najee?
Yeah, thanks. I won't speak too much I agree with Councillor Barlow. In 2020, we had about, under Mr McCabe, maybe 2 or 3 consultants came in. We spent a lot of money, but nothing happened. About Bay Street closure with Councillor Poulos originally, until the council meeting, I think there is a vision in my mind, but that's only my opinion, that the consultant maybe will take on board. Just out of curiosity, the Princess Street and the Grand Parade, that property that got developed, how many car parking underground car parking level was it, 1 or 2? And secondly, what's the height? As in, I know it's 38 meters, but how many levels is that?
Through you, Chair, that development had it was either 3 or 4 levels of basement car parking.
3.
3. There was at least 3. It was very problematic. They had a lot of problems with groundwater, and the project took a lot longer. And councillors might recall the complaints we had about water being pumped out for over 12 months while that was being constructed. And that's one reason why we know that basements are going to be difficult that close to the bay. The height, I'd have to check what the height is.
Okay, just because you referred that more than one level is problematic. So did they sort out the issues with 3 underground car parking?
They did.
Obviously.
It's resolved, but it was very, very expensive. And the Novotel also has issues with its lowest level of car parking. They've done a lot of remedial work since that was built to try and keep the water from coming into the car park. So it's just physics. The water table is very low because it's so close to the bay, and it's very expensive. Anything's possible, but it just adds to the cost and reduces the feasibility.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, councillors. All those in favour of the motion before us, say aye. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Thank you. The last item for tonight is CPE 26003, which is the planning proposal to permit restaurants and cafes in RE1. You can have a presentation on that one, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just waiting for the presentation to come up.
Sure.
So this report is seeking Council's endorsement for staff to prepare a planning proposal to permit restaurants and cafes as a permitted use with consent in the RE1 zone.
Chair, cafes are better leave.
No problem. Thank you.
Leave me hungry.
So currently, restaurants and cafes are not permitted with consent in the RE1 zone. They're done through specific additional permitted uses. And you'll recall the recent planning proposal that we did for La Beach Hut to enable the redevelopment of that cafe. Originally, when the LEP was drafted in 2019, it was proposed to allow those uses in the RE1 zone. But the advice from the planning panel at that stage was that should be considered as a standalone planning proposal, which is what we're seeking council's consent for currently. So currently, a number of councils throughout Sydney allow restaurants and cafes as a permitted use or as an additional permitted use. Our council currently, as I said, allows them only as an additional permitted use or through existing use rights from when they were previously permitted. Existing use rights complicate matters. So La Beach Hut, for instance, had existing use rights, but once that building was demolished, existing use rights are lost. And therefore we prepared a planning proposal to add an additional permitted use. The problem with additional permitted uses is it complicates the planning system. It adds another site-specific use. The more appropriate process to simplify and streamline the approval process is to allow those uses as permitted with consent in the zone. That does not mean, of course, that every park would have a cafe or restaurant. It simply means that if council did choose to put a cafe or restaurant in a park, the planning process is more simple. It goes through a development application process rather than a 2-step process. So as you can see, the objective of this planning proposal is to permit restaurant or cafe with consent in the land use table of the RE1 zone. As I touched on earlier, a number of New South Wales councils do the same. 37% of councils permit restaurant and cafes in the RE1 zone. By doing that, it does enhance the recreational area, supports and is a complementary use to public open space in appropriate locations, not everywhere. So future proposals will be managed through the plans of management the council has for its open space and the DA process. As you know, RE1 land is generally council owned and governed by plans of management, and that is subject to extensive community consultation. So if council does support preparing a planning proposal, site-specific issues will be assessed and managed through a rigorous DA process with future development applications determined by the local planning panel. As part of this process, we also considered whether allowing registered clubs and function centres should be added as an additional permitted use in the RE1 zone. However, these uses tend to have higher impacts in comparison to restaurant and cafes, and often involve multiple uses that makes them more challenging to manage. So our view is there is a risk that these uses could dominate or alienate public space and potentially detracting from the zone's primary purpose of recreation, sporting and community purpose. That said, if there were appropriate sites where registered clubs or function centres could go in the RE1 zone, it is open to council to consider that through a site-specific planning proposal by adding those uses as an APU. But we're not proposing that as part of this planning proposal. So the next steps are we're seeking council's endorsement to prepare a planning proposal. So the report in front of you is effectively an issues and options paper that gives council the opportunity to prepare a planning proposal. We haven't prepared a planning proposal yet. We're seeking council's consent to do so. If supported, we will draft the planning proposal. It will follow the standard process. So we'll report that to the local planning panel for their advice, and then back to the planning committee for consideration and then recommendation to council. If it's supported, then that will go to the Department of Planning for a gateway determination and public exhibition. So that's the process, and that's the recommendation from officers. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for the summary. We have a mover, Councillor Councillor Kassim and Councillor Douglas. Thank you. Any speakers? Councillor Kassim first as a mover.
Thank you very much for preparing this. I think it's great. I mean, certainly looking at what, for example, happens in Cow Park now, it's always full, very popular. So if it is possible to have, cafes, especially if they actually address parks, they're not sort of closed in, I think they will make a very popular addition and will enhance people's, appreciation of parks and such. So I think it's a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Strong.
Just echoing what Councillor Kassim said. I think I support this endorsement for the planning proposal. Cafes, they're so good for social gatherings in parks, and they're not like big function centres. And I think that's clear in this that it's more just the cafes and restaurants. So more places for people to gather would be great. So, thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
I think I've had one complaint about this idea, but I've had many more requests for cafes in parks, such as Barton Park. Why haven't we got a coffee shop in Barton Park? Why isn't there one at Muddy Creek? These are the sorts of public amenities that we want to see in our open spaces now. So I fully support this.
Yeah, and the intent is going to make it easier for people to apply to get it done. Still follow due process, but it makes it easier. So it removes a bit of red tape. Who would have thought that in local government? Councillor Barlow.
Now, does that include the Crown land, like Cook Park?
Yes, anything that's zoned RE1.
So until the lease expires on the Brighton Pavilion, you won't be allowed to have anything. He owns, at the moment, his lease extends.
Through your chair, there is a restriction on the kiosk lease about competition. It does just apply to a certain area, which is part of the foreshore.
So I'll put on my retired small business hat, and you don't want council to start competing with small businesses that are paying. So you don't want them all over the place. We were looking at one at what I call the old Fishers Club, and they decided to not have that there because it wouldn't have made it. It'd be hard to get to, maybe with Barton Park, but you've got restaurants down the bottom. So you've got to be very careful where you place them and how many. I don't know, to me, you've got one in Carl Park. You don't need any more. That's my logic as being a small business owner, a retired small business owner.
Yeah.
very retired.
Very
Anyway,
But
yes.
we wouldn't actually be
I keep
running.
getting asked to go back, but I'm not.
We wouldn't actually be running the cafes. We'd be leasing out the space to a private business.
This is just allowing the application.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more the fact, yes, you're going to run, not going to run them, blah, 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 but it's the fact you've got one in car park, you don't need another one to compete with one that's there. That's all I'm saying is you've got to be very careful. It wouldn't,
Yeah, this is just allowing
Yeah.
people to apply and will follow due process. And if people aren't going to make money, they're not going to apply in the first place if there's no money in it. But some of those things some of the proposals we've done, but primarily this will be used in the open market is my suspicion. And if it's commercially viable, we'll get some applications and it makes it easier. Anyway, thank you, councillors. All those in favour for the proposal in front of us, say aye. Anyone against? No, I'll declare that carried. Thank you. And there be no further business. I'll close the meeting at 7:48 p.m. Thank you.
Ready? Okay, opening of the meeting. Welcome councillors, members of the public and staff. I declare this meeting of the City Works and Assets Committee meeting on the 4th of February 2026 open at 7:55 p.m. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation laws apply to addresses in public forum. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice and Meeting Etiquette. All present are reminded that the YouTube video recording is an official record of council and will be accessible via YouTube in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice. No other recordings are permitted, and all present should ensure that there are no video recordings, audio recordings, or photographs taken. In case of emergency, please follow the instructions of the council staff and exit via the Town Hall foyer and proceed to the evacuation point. I would like to acknowledge the Bidjigal clan, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and work, and acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present. There are no apologies received this evening and no leaves of absence. Great. Are there any councillors who wish to declare disclosure of interest? No? Okay, we can move on. Can I ask two councillors who were present at the meeting, the previous meeting, to move and second the confirmation of the minutes? Councillor Morrissey. Councillor Curry. Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. We have no items by exception, and we will now move straight into reports. So we will go first to CWA 26001, classification of land at 22 York Street, Rockdale.
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of background, 22 York Street, Rockdale is a single-storey house, freestanding. The property is listed in the Bayside LEP in the Land Acquisition Register. So it's a property that council has identified that it would like to acquire at some point to consolidate existing car parks. So following discussions with the owner last year, we agreed terms, and council resolved in August last year to purchase the property, and that acquisition was completed in December last year. As part of that decision to purchase the property, council also resolved to classify the land as operational. The operational classification allows more flexibility with the property so that it can be rented out in the meantime. It could be developed, or it could be potentially sold in the future as part of the upcoming Rockdale Centre Master Plan. So to do that, we had to go to a 28-day public consultation period, and that occurred through December and into January this year, to offer the public an opportunity to comment on that proposed classification. There were no written submissions received during that period. We did receive one phone call from a member of the community asking what operational land meant, and when that was explained to them, they had no problem with the proposal. So this report is now recommending that council, having been through that exhibition period and receiving those submissions, resolves to finally classify the land as operational under the Local Government Act. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. There is an officer's recommendation before us. Is there a mover or a seconder? Councillor Morrissey and Councillor Kassim, is there any discussion? No discussion?
It was just to remove half a sentence. I know it's very minor, but it's the council property officers approach the owner to determine their willingness to sell the property, supported by evaluation, and then full stop, because we've never used compulsory acquisition. And to put that in there actually indicates that we might, and we've never done it. So, and that's with all our open space. We've always said we will not take your house. When you want to sell, you sell. So I'd prefer that we finish at valuation full stop. Because when I read that, I went, my goodness, with something we've never done.
But still amend the back.
It's just amend the report just to change that word, to remove that words. Yeah, that's just concerning when I read it, and it would concern some residents because they'd think they're going to make me sell it, even though you're saying you're not. So if it's taken out of there, it's always under negotiation and agreement, then that's taken out and we're not really threatening. We can delete that. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against, declare that carried. We'll now move on to CWA 26.002, engagement outcomes for Goodyaga Park skateball lighting. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Kansim and Morrissey, thank you. Could we have a report?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. So Council previously resolved for staff to undertake community consultation at the Goodyaga Skate Park to determine whether or not we should light that skate park after dark. A Have Your Say project page was live in October and November, and this report just provides details of the community consultation. So the page was viewed over 500 times. We received over 200 contributors. We distributed 500 flyers. We put signs on the site. There was social media posts, and the engagement appeared twice in our e-newsletter, which has over 46,000 subscribers. So quite a detailed community engagement process. Nearly 95% of respondents said yes, we're interested in seeing council light the skate park after dark. There was a small number that said no, about 8.5%, and that was from 128 contributors, so a fairly decent response to the community engagement process. A feedback form, divided respondents into skaters versus non-skaters, which received 78 contributors. And you can see there, just over 92% of respondents were skaters and just over 7.5% were non-skaters. So results of the engagement, users are very supportive of better lighting at this facility. And the chart to the right details people's positions on how late into the night lighting should be switched on. So based on the feedback, it's recommended that the park should be lit, light should not be turned off any earlier than 9 p.m. So as I said, the feedback received to date shows strong support from the community for lighting of the skate bowl. The skate facility should be lit until at least 9 p.m. And we have identified in the draft work schedule for the new contributions plan, which will be considered by council in the coming months, to fund the necessary lighting upgrades to that park. I believe that's it. Thank you very much.
Is there any discussion, councillors? I have a question. Sorry, Councillor Kassim.
I was just going to say thank you. And I just think this, along with the work which council has done with the Arncliffe Youth Centre, and I think it's good. I think it indicates that we are, we're doing more with our young people, which is a jolly good thing. And if there, other opportunities to get feedback from young people about what else they would like around the LGA, all the better. So thank you very much for doing this.
I just have a question around the officer recommendation. It says including lighting the skateboard until 9 p.m, but with the presentation you said until at least 9 p.m. There's a little bit of a difference there, especially considering most 66% asked for it to go after 9 p.m. to more like 10 or 11. I just wanted to know why the recommendation for 9 p.m, what's the equivalent for Ador, which is next door, what's their turn-off time, and Barton Park as well nearby?
Thank you. I mean, ultimately that's a matter for council, but what the reason we've identified 9 p.m. was not sure if we can bring the presentation back up, but the bar chart to the right identified the community's feedback saying, what's your views at 9 p.m, 8 p.m, 10 p.m? And it's quite hard to read that, but I believe that most of the feedback said go up to 9 p.m. Ultimately, if it was to go to 10 p.m. or later, we would need to consider that. We can benchmark that against lighting in other parks, and ultimately through the It's the same as Adel.
And also the residents be affected.
It's 9 p.m. at Ador and Barton Park.
But in that precinct, that Ador JJ Crane precinct, it's 9 p.m.
Well, that's what it's going to be.
Okay, because I was going to suggest, because it looks to me like a larger percentage went to 10 p.m. and I wondered if we could open that window out from between 9 to 10 p.m. and test out how that is. Because, like, for instance, in daylight savings, that doesn't get dark to a certain, too much later. And then we've got a little bit of wiggle room to play with it there if the community there come back and request later use.
10 seems reasonable.
10 seems, it's a bit.
If you live next door.
If we can do that, it's then, how will we ensure that that doesn't then become that the sports fields are open, for instance, till 10 p.m.
Okay.
That was all. It's just about trying to do a bit of a balance. Now, the lights go off at 9, but the sports fields are empty by about 9:30. By the time they pack up and go, so 9:30ish.
Can we make it 9:30 then? 'Cause 9 seems a little bit of like a bit early for bedtime. Yeah, a bit nanny-ish.
Becomes an antisocial hub, you turn the lights off straight away and don't put them back on.
Yeah.
And
So
that could happen.
could we change that to 9:30 then? Yep. Thank you. Okay. So we've got that well up to 9:30 p.m.
Does that mean then Ador is impacted? No, I think we can talk to them about, they have a bit of a window to leave and make sure it's absolutely vacated by 9:30. The lights go off at 9, but they take a little bit of time to pack up and clear out. So I think we'll be fine with that.
Okay, great. All right. Any other further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Against, declare that carried. So this moves us on to confidential reports. We have one to 26.003, golf driving range at Riverine Park, tender finalisation. Councillors, would you like to move into closed session to discuss the report, or would you like to consider the officer's recommendation in open session, bearing in mind any comments from the report officer and councillors would be limited to those for an open session report? Fine for open session.
Happy to keep it open.
Yeah. Anybody got any burning questions?
Can we start the presentation out in open or not?
Or probably not.
No.
It doesn't mention the financial.
Oh, okay.
We may have to go into close.
Okay. So Councillor Kasim is moving to go into closed, and Councillor Curry, is seconding that. So in accordance with the section 10A4 of the Local Government Act and Council's Code of Meeting Practice, I invite members of the public to make representations as to whether or not this part of the meeting should be closed to the public to consider the confidential items. There being no representations, I move that Council closes the meeting to the public for the reasons outlined in the reports. We've already Now vote on the resumption of the open committee. Are there any councillors voting against? Nay. I will therefore take it that all of you are voting in favour unless indicate otherwise now by saying against. Oh, did we not do move for a second? Sorry. I thought we did. Councillor Sim and Councillor Morrissey. Yeah, at the beginning. Thank you. So we're ready to declare that the motion was carried, and the chairperson or the general manager to announce.
Through the chair, if I can just read the critical parts of the motion. Council adopted the motion as printed on the paper, accepting the tender submission from the Swing Factory as operator of the golf driving range at Riverine Park, with a 3-year works licence followed by a 21-year deed of licence, subject to agreement by both parties of contract conditions. That the General Manager is authorised to negotiate conditions acceptable to both parties and to execute a contract. And in the event that suitable terms can't be agreed with the preferred tenderer, that is Swing Factory, or the contract does not proceed because the offer is withdrawn, then under the Local Government General Regulation, Council delegates authority to enter into negotiations with Barton Golf and Racket Park or Mulfa Australia Proprietary Limited to agree terms. Then allocation of $200,000 to cover the agent's commission for securing a new operator for the driving range be included in the next quarterly budget review. Thank you.
Amazing. So I declare the meeting closed as there are no further items at 8:21 p.m. Thank you. Productive evening.